that what do you mean by IoT? So what is IoT? So as the name is there, Internet of Things, that is the internet is consist of uh, various things. Okay. So in IoT, we will not say that it is a one complete technology. We can say this particular technology is a package of different other technology. So let's go to the definition and then we'll give some more elaborate discussion on that how we can define the IoT. Now, the IoT is an ecosystem of connected physical objects that are accessible through the internet. The thing in cloud could be a person with a heart monitor or an automobile with built-in sensor. That is, objects that have been assigned an IP address and have the ability to collect and transfer data over the network without manual assistant or intervention. Now, if we'll go to this particular definition, there are many things that we have to understand. The first thing it says that IoT is an ecosystem. So ecosystem means so in any ecosystem there are different participants or there are different entities. Each entity depends upon another entity. Here also we have many entities or many modules or many players, you can say, and each player are depend on each other. Here we have different physical object, right? It's not a virtual object that we are talking about. Here we are talking about physical object, physical thing. Okay? And here the physical thing, you can say it as a living or non-living thing. So if we'll say as a living thing means maybe maybe a cow with the RFID tag, maybe the human being with the smart watch, or here it is heart rate monitoring system. Or if we are talking about non-living things, so it may be having some built-in sensors related to it in the car, or if we'll talk about your appliances where we have the built-in sensors, uh, the building where we have some sensors which are there for doing different for generating different data. So here the object, we assign the IP address, then only it will connect to the internet. So without our IP address, we cannot connect anything to the internet. Now let me tell you very clear what happens when we give the IP address to any object. That IP address should be a public IP address. So that will be given when the thing or these object used to collect the data or they want to send the data, they require the internet connectivity. And this internet connectivity can be given to any object, any living or non-living object, if it has the IP address, right? Without IP address, you cannot communicate in the internet. And it should have the ability to collect and transfer the data. Means it, these things or these objects should be able to first collect the data, transfer the data. Second, it should have the ability to generate the data, and whatever instruction will be given to the object, it has some module which will give them the movement. Next thing, it should have the IP addresses, right? Without IP address, I cannot connect anything to the internet. So the name is the Internet of Things. So internet should be there everywhere related to the thing. Now, what are the ability it is talking about? Is talking about that it should have the ability to collect as well as transfer the data over the network without manual assistant or intervention. So it says that without any manual assistant, we should able to communicate with it as well as without doing any interference by the human being. Means they can be capable of doing things by their own. So that is the requirement of those objects which want to connect to the internet and want to be the part of the Internet of Things. Okay. Now let's talk about in a very uh, normal or not in very going to the technical way, just going to the layman term. Okay. So let's say I want to connect one object to the internet. First of all, the question is why I want to connect anything to the internet. So there are only two requirements of any object to connect to the internet. First, I want to monitor that thing. Second, I want to control that thing. Let's talk about a air condition in your home. That air condition is an object. I want to connect the air condition to the internet. The question is why? Why I want to connect the internet, the AC to the internet? First, I can monitor the AC means whether it is working right now, whether what is the temperature it is right now, means in which temperature it is working right now. Next thing what I want is what is the fan speed, everything related to what I can see in a remote. That I want to monitor. The second thing, I want to control it. Control it means I can on and off the AC. I can change the temperature of the AC. I can uh, make the fan swing or make the fan speed low and high. So these are the requirements. So mainly two requirements. First, monitor. Second, control. These monitor and control, if we are doing, if we want to do remotely. So if it is the AC is in this room and always I'll be in this room, so I don't need to connect my AC to the internet. Why? Because I have the remote. I can use the remote to see as well as to monitor as well as to control. But if I am not in the room, if I am not in the room where the AC is, I am somewhere else. So my geographical location is not in the proximity of the AC, but still I want to monitor as well as I want to control. So for that, I use the technology which is called Internet of Things. So for that, what I'll do? So here comes the how part. So the first part is why part, means anything which I want to connect. So I have to see why I want to connect this particular thing to the internet. After answering the why part, let's go to the how part. How we can connect anything to the internet. So the connecting the thing to the internet, the first thing we required is we have to align with the answer of the why. Why we have chosen that particular appliances or that particular thing to be connected to the internet. So if we'll talk about the AC, I want to see whether it is on or off, what is the temperature it is. So for that, what I required the sensors, proper sensors, which will tell me that whether the AC is on or off, what is the temperature of the AC, what is the fan blowing speed of my AC. So all those things I should get from the sensors. So sensors should be attached to these ACs or these things. Now, what sensor will do? Sensor will generates the data through the environment. What environment is giving us? So based on the sensor, let's say we have a temperature sensor. What it will do? It will find out the temperature of the environment. If I have the pressure sensor, what it will do? It will find out the pressure, how much pressure this sensor is having. If I have a light sensor, what it will do? It will find out the intensity of the light. If there is a proximity sensor, what it will do? It will find out that what is the object nearby this particular sensor, right? And what is the distance of that object to that particular sensor. So there are lots of sensors available which can fulfill your requirement, and these sensors will generate the data, and this is the thing what sensor do, generates the data. Now after generating the data, what it will do? Now it will have to save somewhere. These data has to save somewhere. This data has to process somewhere, and that data should be transferred. The data should be transferred. This is another requirement. Okay, this is another requirement. So for that, what is required? We required a type of processing nodes which has the capability to store, which has the capability to process those data, and which has the capability to transfer those data. So at that requirement, to fulfill that requirement, we have different microcontrollers and microprocessors which will help us. So these sensors are attached to the microcontrollers or microprocessor.
Excuse me, sir. We could see the only first slide still. What is IoT?
Yes, I am in the first slide only.
Okay, sir.
And whatever your question is, I'll request you will interrupt me at very last, because this lecture is recording, and I'll put the recording in the YouTube for your further reference. So as I told you that there are sensors which should be attached with the object, and it will generates the data, sensor data, behalf of that object, and these data has to be processed, has to be stored, and has to be transferred. So for that we require the microcontroller and microprocessors. So for that we need the technology which is there in the embedded technology. So embedded technology is nothing but will use those technology in the hardware which is having specific software related to the hardware. Okay, so that we require. For that we need the technology which is called embedded technology, and with the help of those microcontroller and microprocessor, we connect the sensor nodes, and these sensors will generate the data which is further converted into the analog to digital by these microcontroller or microprocessor, stored in the system which has a tiny amount of memory or processing power. They will do that, and these embedded system has the capacity to transfer those data. These embedded systems or these microcontroller will also have the capacity to connect with the internet, means they will get the IP addresses. So that facility is also there with these microcontroller or those embedded systems. So these embedded system in the object help them to interact with the internal state or the external environment which in turn affect the decision making. So the decision making will see slowly. So I think you understood what I told you till now. So whatever object you want to connect, you have to put the sensor, associated sensor to that particular object. And these associated sensor cannot alone do everything. It will only generate the data. So you have to have a microcontroller or micro processor which will take those data, which will process those data, which will store those data and transfer the data into the to the through the internet to one place where a human being or the user can see those data, can monitor those data, right? Now I told you there are two main objective of Internet of Things. First, I could monitor the object remotely. Second, I could control the object remotely. Remotely means I'm not in the place of where the object is. So can I still monitor or can I still control? So I told you how to monitor. Like with the help of sensors, we can do the monitoring. I'll tell you one more example. Let's say I am sitting in a chair, right? So I want to connect this chair to the internet. The question is why I want to connect this chair to the internet. The answer is very simple. I want to know that whether the chair is occupied or not occupied. Now, whether the chair is occupied or not occupied, for that I'll use the sensor. Now, sensor reading will tell me that the chair is occupied or not occupied. For that, I'll use IR sensor or proximity sensor or any type of pressure sensor or motion sensor, any type of sensor which will give me the data, which will tell me that somebody is sitting in this particular chair, on this particular chair or not. So if somebody is sitting on the chair, I could able to get whether it is occupied or not occupied through the sensor. That is a monitoring thing. So that thing I can do with the sensor. So sensor should be attached. So first of all, I have to attach a sensor to the object which I want to monitor. As well as sensor alone cannot do anything. So we need the microcontrollers or the microprocessor, which will do the further processing, storage, and transmission of those data. Now, the next thing is related to IoT is control. How can I control any object remotely? So for controlling the object, I use another type of component, which is called actuator. Now, these actuators are also require these microcontroller or microprocessor. Now, what is the actuator? First, let's try to understand what we mean by actuator. So, the actuator is nothing but a component which provides the movement to the object, which provides the movement to the object. So, there are different servo motors which act as a actuator. We give the signal to those servo motors. These servo motors has two type of motion. Either they will have the circular motion or they will have the linear motion. So two type of servo motors are there. So if I want to move anything, I'll use the circular servo motors. Let's say I want to move a van or automobile. So for that I'll use that. Or I have to give the movement which is a linear movement, so I'll use the linear servo motor for that. For the appliances, different appliances, electrical appliances, electronic appliances, I'll use another type of actuator which is called relays. Okay, relay. I'll show you in further classes what are those relays are. These relay has again will give the signal whether we have to on or off the appliances, and based on that it will on and off any appliances. So you understand that we have two things here in the physical level of IoT, which is a sensor and the actuators. Sensor will help us to monitor the thing. Actuator will help us to control the thing. Both are attached with the microcontroller, which provides the signal or which gets the signal from these sensor and these actuators. And they has the duty to transmit those data which should reach to the user. So in the physical level, we attach the sensors and the actuator whenever it is required. Let's say if we require only for the monitoring, we just use the sensor. If we require monitoring as well as controlling, so we'll use sensor as well as actuator both. So in this particular way, I can connect anything so that these embedded system, which is a combination of sensors, microcontrollers, and actuators, are attached to the object which we want to connect to the internet. Okay, so it is that simple as that. And these sensors generates the data on behalf of the object, and this actuator give the motion or give the movement to this particular object. Okay. Now all these are related to the human being, actually human body. Now I'll talk about this particular example in a later class when we have some more exposure related to the IoT and how it is working actually, and what are the different components are there. On that particular time, I'll tell you what are those. So in a car, if I want to make that car as an autonomous car, what I require different type of sensors which will give me the reading, right? What is the speed of the car? Whether somebody is in front of the car or not. If there is somebody, then what is that? Whether it is a road or some human being or some animal or some security personnel, who is that? uh, I should know in which gear my car is, the speed and all, and so all those things I required. Next thing I required is the actuator, different actuator. What are those actuators in the car? So there are clutch, there are brake, there are steering. All those are act as a act as an actuators. So we have to give the signal to the steering, let's say slight move left for, let's say, 5 degree or 2 degree or 3 degree of left or right or center. We have to give the signal to the actuator brake, that how much pressure I have to apply to stop or just to slow down. So all those things are related to the internet examples what I told you. So anything which you want to connect to the internet, first of all, it required the sensors. And second thing, it required the actuator. Sensor will help us to monitor the object. Actuator will help us to control the object. And both could be attached with the microcontroller or microprocessor for the internet capability and for the transmission or for data collection and storage and processing capability. And in this way, we can make the physical layer of IoT. And this physical layer is called wireless sensor network, where we have the sensors, which are sensor nodes. And the sensor node is comprises of the sensors and the microcontrollers. If we'll add the actuator, that is also called sensor nodes. And these nodes are responsible for collecting the data, transmitting the data, to the internet. So this is one basic component of IoT. With the help of that, we can actually create the infrastructure, physical infrastructure of IoT. Okay. I hope you understand till now. If you have any query, you can ask me. Related to this, if you have any query, you can ask me. Okay. Now let's go to the next slide. The degree of IoT is not confined to just interfacing thing, gadget, counter machines to the internet. IoT grant these things to connect and exchange information, control and information that could fuse data related with customers while executing huge application towards an ordinary customer or machine objective. Now, it says that the IoT is nothing but making anything automated. Okay, and this is not the objective of IoT. That if we have the gadget or if we have the machine, we are making it automated or automatically it is working. It is not the IoT. IoT is beyond that. Now, in the IoT, we have the sensors which are connected with the thing and they will generate the information, the data. The data is given to a specific place where from these data, some results will be generated. And these results are actually the knowledge of related to these IoT infrastructure. So here in this particular time line, you can see here. So we have the data which is actually collected with the sensors, the raw data from device in the IoT. These wireless sensor network will do that. Then the information will be retrieved by filtering or condensing the data. And from this information will get some knowledge. The knowledge is nothing but the structuring information to achieve a specific goal. Let's assume that I want to make a IoT infrastructure for the agriculture application. So what I'll do is I'll put the sensors, different sensors into the field, farming field. And what are the sensors I have to apply there? Let's say I have the soil moisture sensor, I have the temperature sensor, humidity sensor. I have some infrared camera, which will tell me that what is the state of the crop in that particular field. And how it is generated. So these sensor nodes, which we use to put into the field, will generate different type of data, which will help us to monitor the state of the crop as well as what is the state of the soil. Do we require the more moisture? Depend upon the crop. And what is the state of the crop right now? In which state that crop is. So based on those data, the data will be generated by these sensor network. It will process in this particular embedded system and give this particular information to through the internet to one place where we put the technique to find out the knowledge or to get the result. That do we require to put the pesticides into the field or do we require more water to pour into the field? So that particular decision is nothing but the knowledge. So IoT is not only making the thing automated, it is beyond that. So it is also for collecting the data, for processing the data, and getting the knowledge from those data. So these are also the work of, or the requirement of IoT. Okay. This particular graph will show you that how this IoT has been evolved. So in 2000, we talked about the radio frequency identifier tags, RFID tags, and this technology has been grown up at that particular time. After that, it will be helping. After that, we are looking for the supply chain or the surveillance, security, healthcare, transport, food safety, and document management. For that, we require the technology related to IoT. Then in the late 2015-16, we are trying to locate the people and everyday objects, that where the specific location of those objects are. And then in 2000, near to 2000, we are talking about teleoperation and telesenses, ability to monitor and control distance object. That is the actual work of the IoT, to control and to monitor the distance object, the remote object. So here the evolve of the IoT as we have seen, and right now we are working on that. And there are different applications which can do that, or which can give the different the algorithm technologies, as well as the embedded system, which will fulfill those requirements. So the concept is there from 2000, but to implement that nowadays, or 4 or 5 years back, we had thought of it. Why? How it is possible? Because of the advancement of the technology, because of the enhancement of the embedded technologies, and those electronic technologies. And because of that advancement only, we have the resources which, with the help of that, we can actually implement those things, okay, through the Internet of Things. So these three slides are telling you that the very basic or very brief way that what is Internet of Things, and how it evolve, what are the different components are there in the Internet of Things, and basic component are there in the Internet, and what are the usage of the Internet of